Alright everybody, we're going to work on making solid claim statements. So we've already gone over really the theory behind claim statements and what they should do. So a claim statement is clearly responding to the prompt. And it sounds easy, but sometimes there are nuances that we don't think about. So we're going to unlock the prompt here. And what I want you to do first is I want you to highlight the verbs. So you're going to go through and you're going to highlight all the verbs, okay? So what I want you to do now is I want you to pause and highlight the verbs. Okay, so now that you've highlighted your verbs, it should look very similar to mine. So what we want to do now is we want to make a list of what we need to do. So go ahead and pause the video right now and make a list of what you need to do based on those verbs. So what I'm going to tell you is you don't really need to look at that first sentence. That first sentence is giving us background information. Start from the second sentence and write a list of all the things that you need to do. So now you should have something that looks similar to this. We need to write an essay outline. We need to explain how Vonnegut uses the characters to develop the message. We need to use evidence. We need to support our answers. So that's really the list of what we have to do based on this prompt that we've been given. So now what I want you to do is take a minute and figure out what needs to be included in your claim. Like, what are we answering from this question and based on that list? So take time, pause, come up with your answers. Okay, you should have taken the time to come up with a list. So now what we're going to do is look at what I came up with. So the message has to be included in the claim. I have to say what Kurt Vonnegut's message is. And then I have to also tell how Vonnegut uses the characters to express the message. So I have to have the message, I have to identify the characters, and how these characters express the message. So it's like 3 parts. I combined 2 parts into one statement, but there are really 3 things that we're looking for here. So what I want you to do on this page is I want you to find your claim. It's open for you. Go into your pre-assessment. You can view it. I want you to copy and paste your claim here. And then what I want you to do is highlight where you stated the message. So highlight the message portion in one color. And then in another color, you're going to highlight where you explained how the characters were used. So one color is the message and the other color is how the characters were used. Not the characters, but how the characters were used, okay? So some examples of how would be things like talking about the handicaps on the characters, talking about using Harrison to show rebellion while Hazel and George show complacency. Talking about the handicaps on the characters not being equal. You could talk about the masks, you could talk about any of those things, but that's what we're looking at for the how. So we can talk about the imagery there, we can talk about the character development, how Harrison has one kind of arc and Hazel and George have different arcs. So there's lots of hows you can do here. So what you should notice here is that one or both parts that you had to include were missing. So some of you mentioned theme but didn't tell me what the theme was. Some of you mentioned the characters but didn't tell me how they were used. So you should notice that there was a lot in this prompt, and because of that, sometimes we get overwhelmed and our claims become very weak and there's not a clear response to the prompt. So now what I want you to do is I want you to look at your claim and identify how you could have made your claim better. So for a lot of you, that's going to be answering the how the characters were used and identifying the message. Then I want you to consider if your weak claim made it really hard for you to do the following parts of the essay. Because you didn't have a strong claim, did that kind of make your following statements and body paragraphs a little weak, or what do you think? And then I want you to write your thoughts about your writing and what you can do in the future to make sure you have a strong claim. So that's what I want you to do here. So here's an example of a claim statement that gets one part right, but kind of misses the other parts of it. And it's not that anything's bad about this, it's just vague, and that's going to hurt us when we're developing our essay. So they have the theme here. So we have this, they should embrace their differences, and then we also have that uses character development. Okay, but character development is kind of one of those vague terms. So how does he use the character development? That's what we would want to dig into. So we'd want to dig into the how. So do we want to think about Harrison? Because that's really the only character that kind of develops. Or do we want to look at George and Hazel and their lack of development? So we have to answer those questions first. So let's consider this. Let's say we want to use Harrison. So we can say Kurt Vonnegut uses the character Harrison Bergeron How does he use him? He uses the character, let's say, he uses the rebellious actions of the character Harrison Bergeron to portray his message that people should embrace their differences. So if I do this and I have this, my how is the rebellious actions of Harrison Bergeron, and the message is people should embrace their differences. So I didn't change that part, but I made my how a little more specific. So by doing that, what I have done is now I know what my body paragraphs are going to be. So I'm going to look at the rebellious actions. So I have to show that, so like the first thing I have to do is, the first thing I have to do is prove that Harrison Bergeron is rebellious. Maybe I could spell one of these days. And then the next thing that I have to do is show like how this embraces this theme, right? So we have to, in proving he's rebellious, we have to show the excessive handicaps. We have to show him breaking away. We kind of have to quote him on freedom things. And then we have to link him to the idea of people embracing their differences. So that would be how we would take this claim and kind of go through some body paragraphs. So this is what essentially you want to do for your reflection and your prompt.